Hey, Lordy, look at the time.
M-PWRD.
Okay, yes, so we'll just kick it off then. Welcome back to another episode of the M-PWRD podcast. Today we are joined by Laura, but Laura, I'll let you just basically say a little bit about what you do and then we'll dig into it.
Yeah, so my name's Laura Middleton. I'm a content creator and social media manager, consultant, all of the above.
Yeah. So, obviously I've seen your stuff on Instagram like long before I'd met you through work. So just a little bit of background. So obviously as part of the content creation course that one of the content creation courses that we deliver, Laura is actually, amongst other things, now also helping us with the students with that. So kind of going out and speaking to some of our content creation students and doing the content creation teaching as well as being a content creator yourself / social media / everything that kind of falls under that like digital landscape. But I'd seen your Instagram before that, and I didn't even know it was you basically until like
Right.
a couple of weeks ago. So did you want to just kick off a little bit about how you got into that whole sort of social media world?
Yeah, so my background's actually like photography, videography. I started off as a fashion photographer years ago, and then a lot of their content was like on social. They had like 1 million Facebook followers or something at the time,
Right.
and obviously that was like a big thing
Yeah.
back then. So yeah, I naturally kind of progressed into doing a bit of their social content when IGTV was a thing. We did
Right.
some like viral videos with them, and that was
God,
fun.
remember IGTV? What happened to that?
Oh, yeah, I'm so glad it doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, and then I moved into live stream video producing for a little bit,
Right.
which was interesting. I used to work for a company called Crafters Companion for Sarah Davies,
Right.
Dragon's Den.
Yeah, wow.
And COVID hit, live streaming absolutely skyrocketed.
Yeah.
So there was like 3 of us on this team trying to churn out all these live streams like every day of the week. It was crazy.
So what did that entail, the live streaming?
So it was like an online shopping channel, so like QVC style stuff, but like on
Right.
like YouTube, Facebook, selling craft supplies. But because it's not on TV, you could have a little bit more fun with it.
Right, okay.
But yeah, then I started doing a bit of social for Sarah because she needed some stuff for while she was doing Dragon's Den and things.
Like from a personal brand perspective, she needed it.
Yeah, pretty much. So I was helping her out with Instagram and things. But I had my food blog
Yes.
back. I think I started that 2018.
Yes, because that's what I'd seen, the food blog.
Yeah.
I mean, it was always on my explore page. I just came across it like a couple of times. So it was the food blog like the first social thing that you kind of got into?
Yeah, and I think the only real reason that started was I used to go out every week for dinner with my dad
Right,
to like
okay.
catch up, and we always used to go and try somewhere new. But I post a picture of like my breakfast on my own account, and I got like loads of likes, and loads of people were like, "Oh, where's this at?" I'm like, if I keep posting pictures of my dinner, I'm just going to really annoy everyone.
Yes.
So I'll make a separate account and see what happens, and then yeah.
That's really cool. I can never do that because I just keep going back to the same places and ordering the same things. So I think that's what's holding me back from that. So it's quite good that you explore different places every single time.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of out of like the necessity of not wanting to annoy your friends and family that you set up a separate page.
Pretty much, and then I kind of found if I did used to repeat visit places, the page made us not, because I was like, oh, I've already got a picture of that. I need to go somewhere else, and
Yeah.
I need to do like purposefully go out of my way to try new things. So
Yeah. What's the handle? We'll stick the handle in the...
Jodie Scran.
Jodie Scran.
Yeah.
We'll stick the handle in for that as well, so you guys can check it out. If you are in Newcastle, it is good to kind of see different places, and Jodie Scran has them all on there. So do you just do in Newcastle, or do you just do like other places as well?
It's funny. It used to just be Newcastle,
Yeah.
and then feel really funny about posting something from elsewhere.
Right,
But
okay.
Now, like whenever I'm out and about, if I
Yeah.
get food or whatever, but
Jodie Scran on tour.
pretty much, yeah. Well, DFDS sent me to Amsterdam for the weekend.
Really?
Yeah, so that was fun. But so then yeah, it was Jodie Scran
You
on
took the
tour.
ferry?
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
Well, they put us up in the really nice like luxury cabins. and
Really?
stuff, so it was quite nice. Yeah.
So I guess that kind of leads us on to the next thing then. So obviously, you know, you've posting about the food that you were eating just to kind of share it with people, and probably just enjoy doing it yourself as well. And then that's kind of led on to like paid opportunities and stuff like that. So how did that kind of come about, and what was the kind of first moment that you realized, oh, well, actually this could be more than just somewhere to not annoy my friends?
I think it was probably back there was a few, like, I used to get invited, like, for free food and stuff quite a bit.
Yeah.
But then there was things like brands like Deliveroo and stuff like that were getting involved more so over, like, lockdown period and stuff.
Yeah.
And, like, then we're like, oh, well, we've got budget, we'll pay you to do it. I was like, oh, you're going to pay me to get a takeaway, mint? So,
Yeah.
like, then it was 2 summers ago, I think, 2 summers ago. I got an email through from, like, Ninja Kitchen.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, we'd really love to work with you. We'd love to do an advert. I was like, oh, yeah, cool. We'll do, like, an advert for, like, Instagram or, like, Facebook or something like that. And they were like, yeah, well, just tell us your rates. I was like, okay. So we said, yeah, no problem. And they were like, oh, we'll do a couple of recipes with you as well. I was like, well, I don't really cook, but okay. And then the next thing I know, I got sent this huge, long document with a call time at a studio in London that I was expected to go down for.
Wow.
And all of these things that I needed to sign and the way I needed to dress, and I didn't realise it was actually a TV advert to advertise, like, their air fryer. So I was like, oh, I guess I'm going to London to film a TV advert then.
Wow.
So that
Is that the kind of pinnacle of what? Yeah. Air fryers are weird just on that because they're just a little oven, you know.
Yeah.
They're just like the companies that make air fryers also make ovens.
Yeah.
So basically, they've convinced people who already have an oven to buy a little oven. Like Big Oven has convinced people that what they need now is a little oven.
Yeah. Take less energy though.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Is that the advantage of an air fryer? That it's
make,
just
like, chicken in 40 minutes.
really.
Uh-huh.
So you're an advocate for air fryers then?
Yeah, I do like an air fryer.
Fair enough. Do you know what's probably the most impressive thing about all of that is that if I was offered free food, I would weigh 150 kilos right now. Like if my whole thing was that I could just get free food. So congratulations on yeah, because that would I'd be in a bad place if people just kept messaging me and asking me for free if I wanted free food. So after you've done, so do you think that kind of led you into doing kind of a role within digital marketing then, because you had the credentials, if you like, from that?
I think I'd always been interested in social media, and obviously having that, I did get a previous job as a social media manager off the back of that page pretty much.
Right.
But
Wow.
then it was kind of like, obviously being in restaurants and stuff all the time, I'd end up talking to the marketing teams and stuff like that, or if they didn't have a marketing team, or if they had a front of house or whatever.
Right.
And so now this page, Geordie's Grant, gets me my clients pretty much. It opens up the conversation with, like, chefs and stuff like that. So it kind of was the catalyst for everything else.
I guess you can use that to help the businesses that you work with as well by kind of plugging them. Like you've got a page there that you can use to promote some of the businesses that you work with. And I think, you know, having helped some businesses that are in that kind of hospitality sector, it can be a difficult one from a social media standpoint to kind of get the mark right, because how many times can you just post like pictures and videos of your food, and then, you know, it becomes difficult from a social media standpoint. So having that unique selling point that you've got leverage and something that's going to drive traffic, I guess that's really important. But it's just so interesting to see there that the kind of progression without kind of going out and looking for it, and the opportunities that you've created for yourself off of, you know, a hobby / you know, passion project that you can then work hard at and get like kind of other opportunities off the back. So from doing Geordie Scran, you then went into a social media job, and then the live stream stuff off of the back of that. So it's kind of just snowballed.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's been very strange. But and then now my job, creating content for all my clients, things like that, it almost to the point where for me it doesn't feel like work now, and I'm like,
yeah,
right, this is definitely something I want to carry on doing, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, you were doing it before it was work, essentially, which I think is kind of the best thing, isn't it? If you do something that you enjoy doing and you get good enough at it, people pay you for it.
Have you read a book? It's called F Work. Oh, is it? Yeah, F Work, Just Play.
Yeah, is it the actual word fuck? We can swear on the podcast. No, we can swear. Yeah.
Fuck work, nice play. Let's play.
Okay, cool.
It's the best book ever. It's
right.
like, I read it just before I started my social media company. And
do you know what? You posted it not that long ago. You actually did. I saw that. Yeah. Yes.
It's the best book ever. And it talks about all these people who've taken something that they love or that they're passionate about and just made money from it. Like this woman wanted to learn how to play the ukulele, so she taught herself how to play the ukulele, and then she would go around doing team building exercises with people. teaching them how to play the ukulele.
Yeah.
But she was working with Google. She was working with Facebook.
Yeah.
Like,
Did you ever meet the Lego guy from any of the like the Northeast events?
No.
There's a guy, I can't remember his name, really nice chap. He does like Lego parties, but
Right.
at like businesses. So he goes and uses Lego as a tool or for team building.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of, it's obviously a fun thing to do, Lego, and obviously a lot of people have like childhood memories of Lego, but he uses like the team building and building stuff, and he does sessions in businesses. Obviously he's passionate about Lego. So it's just crazy, isn't it? I actually on that I once saw, I don't know if it was a documentary or whether I just saw it on social media or something, but a guy who like all he wanted to do was climb trees. And that was his thing, like he just wanted to climb trees, which, there's not a lot of monetization in climbing trees. But now, and I think he was in trouble at school, and like they were like, his family were, what are you doing, like climbing trees all the time? And I think that he, to this date, has discovered more plants and animal species in the Amazon rainforest than any other person. So he basically climbs the trees and discovers new...
That's really cool.
That's really cool, isn't it? So I think, if you love doing something, it kind of leads naturally into getting good at it. Because it's hard to get good at something. It's hard to get good at something that you really aren't passionate about. So after we've kind of gotten into the social media world, one of the other things that I'd kind of wanted to speak to you about, something that you've been open about recently, and obviously right now, and though this podcast won't air, but at this time it's Neurodiversity Week, which is obviously like a chance for businesses and individuals to recognise, the differences that we have from on that sort of front. So obviously I'll let you kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I was diagnosed with ADHD just under a year ago, and it's been a bit of a wild ride over the last 12 months or so, learning about how there's so much neurodiversity that I didn't even realise existed. And I think I've realised that a lot of my ADHD traits have made me quite good at what I do, but there also is a lot of downsides as well.
Yeah. So how did you kind of come about? So for a lot of people, they might have ADHD or some other kind of divergence. Yeah. They might have something else. So I know there's autism, there's ADHD, and they might not know how to go about kind of even testing for that. So what were the steps for you?
So I initially, it was a post on LinkedIn that I saw, and I was like, this really speaks to me, like everything that this girl is saying. So I messaged her and I was like, I'm just really curious, like, she went, I got diagnosed however long ago, but this was kind of when there was a big influx of people getting a late diagnosis.
Right.
Had the option of going through the NHS, but the waiting lists are 3 years long or something at the moment, which is crazy. So I went private for my assessment. It just literally, I had to just go to my GP and go, look, I've got all of these reasons as to why I think that there's something up. And then went private for my diagnosis, and then recently started medication now, but back with the NHS.
Right.
But that's obviously nearly a year has gone by, which is, in the grand scheme of things at the moment, it's pretty fast. But obviously medication's optional, but there's just basically a few talks with the psychiatrist, a lot of paperwork, which is obviously not the best, but and then an account from a close family member who kind of, it had to have shown up as a kid as well, so I got my dad to fill out all the paperwork for that side of things as well.
Right, okay. So you found that was the best way, was to kind of go private to get your diagnosis and then revert back to the NHS for the actual medication.
Only because it would have cost even more money to go and get medicated privately.
Okay.
So I was I've already forked out for a diagnosis.
Who did you go through? Who did you go through?
It was through RTN.
Right. Okay.
And then now I'm with Psychiatry UK for medication, because one thing that I would recommend anyone if they are seeking a diagnosis is, if when you do go back to the NHS, go through Right to Choose and either pick Psychiatry UK or ADHD 360, depending on where you are in the world and the UK. But it kind of cuts down on the waiting list, and then you can go back through shared care to be able to be referred back to the NHS to get your prescriptions and everything.
Right. Okay. And how long have you? How are you finding? How are you finding it since you've started? Is it better or?
Yeah, it's weird. So
Right.
I only started like 5 days ago.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're pretty fresh in, but you can feel a difference already.
Yeah, and my dose is obviously crazy low at the moment.
Right.
But yeah, I've kind of noticed I've calmed down a little bit,
Right.
and my mind's not as racing.
Okay.
I think it's the first couple of days I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Right,
And then now
okay.
I think my body's kind of acclimatized
Yeah.
into it a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's slept better.
You'll be building up like a tolerance as well, I
Yeah.
imagine. So then you'll be upping the dose.
Yeah.
Right.
So then next week it's like double dose, and then see what happens.
Yeah. So sleeping better, feeling like you can kind of get on top of your thoughts a little bit more. Is that kind of the
Yeah, it's weird, very small things that I find myself doing.
Right.
Like, for example, I'll finish my dinner, and normally I'd like go off and get distracted and walk away from, leave the plate on the table. Now
Yeah.
I actually went and put it in the dishwasher the
Oh,
other day. I
right,
was like,
okay.
oh my God.
Yeah.
Who am I? And what have you done with Laura? But like, just little things like
Yeah.
that, which to anyone else, really normal thing.
Yeah.
But like, for me, I was like, oh, this is what being an adult feels like a proper adult.
Yeah. And are you feeling that you're kind of able to stay on tasks a little bit longer and stuff like that?
Yeah, like I have hyper-focused so much work over the last like few days at times where I would have been getting agitated and getting fidget and like walking off and stuff.
Yeah.
And I've had like good solid hours of work that I've just managed to get through loads. So yeah, it's making a difference.
Yeah. So one thing I think that people, a misconception that people have with ADHD, I believe, is that they think people can't focus at all. Now, that's not necessarily true. You can focus on the things that you want to focus on,
Yeah.
and you can really hyper focus. Sometimes it's a bad thing because sometimes you'll find yourself in rabbit holes. I think that's a real thing with ADHD.
Yeah.
Like, you'll find yourself deep inside of rabbit holes because if you start focusing on something and it's not necessarily beneficial, you will just kind of like dive deep down there. Like I was like finding out about fighters who fought in like Pride, which was like one of the things before the MMA, before the UFC, from like the early 2000s. I was like finding out like their height and their like weight, and now I've got like all this useless information.
Yeah.
I was like delving deeper and deeper and deeper, and like I was going back to that amateur kickboxing bout, and now I've got this like vast knowledge of these like practically unknown fighters from
Yeah.
Pride. But I think that one of the kind of, things, like you said earlier, there were certain things that your ADHD really helped with. Creativity, focusing on the things that you want to focus on, a unique perspective that
yeah.
other people don't share. Sometimes it allows you to see a way around problems that other people don't. Now, is that a worry that you might lose some of that?
A little bit.
Okay.
I have heard things from other people who've been medicated that the problem is, although I do think my ADHD attributes to me being creative and all that kind of thing, it's great being creative and having all the ideas, but
Yeah.
not great if you can't do them.
Implementation's everything.
So I think I'm hoping that I don't lose that part of it. But it's funny when you were saying about rabbit holes, because that's basically what my food page ended up being. It was like,
Yeah.
I need a distraction from work. I'm going to put all my time and effort into running this food page that makes me no money.
Yeah.
But then now it does, I suppose, so it's not too bad. But
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it's the creativity stuff sticks around.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? You can focus on the things that you want to focus on. So hopefully you'll kind of keep that same level of like focus on those things that do excite you, without like necessarily needing the medication to.
Yeah. One thing I had noticed that like normally if like I get, I don't know, like a new client approaches us and they're talking about idea sessions and stuff like that, normally I'll get really excited, but I'll not be able to kind of like structure where my head's going with it. So although I'll be excited, I'll almost be more anxious about, oh, but then there's this and then there's this and then there's this. Whereas the other day I had like a new client approach and go, oh, well, we've got this idea for this thing. I found myself getting excited, but I had an end vision of what it looked like, rather than not seeing the wood for the trees kind of thing, which is hopefully that sticks around as well.
And did you ever feel like, and I don't know if this is just something that I kind of feel that hasn't actually got anything to do with ADHD, but do you ever feel like when you have ideas and when you have like those kind of creative flows and you get something in your head, it's not just distressing is not necessarily the right word, but it almost is. Do you feel like it's somewhat distressing when the plan varies from that? And when you can't see your vision is being kind of moved away from. Did you ever feel like that, where that would stress you out if things were changing, if things were having to change?
Yeah, I'm quite bad with stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think it is an ADHD thing because it's kind of a trait of perfectionism.
Yeah.
It's like we tend to be all or nothing people. So like, if we can't do something exactly how we want it to be done, we're not interested.
Yeah, it stresses you out a little bit
yeah.
when things change, like plans change, or you plan to do an idea, but now like people are kind of going away from that.
Yeah, you have very strong expectations for everything, I think. And I think that's where a lot of like things like imposter syndrome come from,
Yeah.
and things like that. Like you have very, very high expectations
Yeah.
for yourself and all the negative self-talk that
If it's not
comes with
perfect,
it.
you don't want it.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just like, oh, this isn't perfect, just forget it then.
And you think that everyone else is going to think like that when actually they're
Yeah.
not. Like I've handed projects in to clients, and you know when you've probably done it yourself, where you think all you see in that piece of work is everything that's wrong with it, although it's exactly what it needs to be done, and it's a perfectly good piece of work to
Yeah.
someone else.
Yeah.
But there's been projects where I'm like, oh god, I'm just not happy with this
Yeah.
bit and this bit and this bit. But I've given it to the client, they're like, oh my god, we absolutely love
Yeah,
it. And
well,
I'm like,
you know where the potholes are,
Yeah.
but they don't necessarily, do they? They might miss those potholes, but you know where they are.
Yeah.
You know where where the bodies are buried, essentially,
Yeah.
in that. So they might not see it straight away, but you kind of, that's all you can focus on sometimes, isn't it? When you know that there's something in there that could be better. But yeah, sometimes, especially when it comes to social media, I think that you get a misconception that other people know as much about social media and digital marketing
Yeah.
as you do. You feel like some things are common knowledge that really aren't. So I think that's where imposter syndrome starts to creep in, because you're like, oh, everybody knows that.
Yeah.
But actually, when you start digging into things and people have no idea,
Yeah.
it starts to make you relax a little bit. I used to get imposter syndrome when I started being a personal trainer, because I was like, everybody knows this. It's common knowledge.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It was just because I'd had a strong sports background that I'd spent the 10, 15 years leading up to that around physical activity all of the time. And actually, when you start speaking to most people, people in their 40s who were asking you if bananas had dairy in them. That's a genuine
Yeah.
one, 40 years old. Do bananas have, if you're watching this, you know who you are. Do bananas have dairy in them? And it's like, that relaxes you, because you're like, holy shit, maybe I do know things.
Yeah, I think it's with social media as well. Like I did a workshop a few months before, before Christmas now. And at first, when the company reached out and said, "Oh, we'd love you to run a workshop," I was like, "Me, really?" And there's another Laura Middleton in the Northeast who is a very successful businesswoman who also works with social media and has an agency. And I actually went back to this person and was like, do you have the right person?
Yeah.
Is it definitely me that you're looking for? Because I know the other Laura Middleton and put you in touch.
There's a lot of Middletons in. Did we say there was somebody else?
Ellie Middleton, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of Middletons in this space.
Yeah. So that was then. But then when I did the workshop, everyone came out of it, and it was just small businesses and stuff like that. And literally in this workshop was like how to successfly set up a Facebook page.
Yeah.
But they were all taking notes.
They're looking at you like you're
loved
you're talking about fire before there was fire.
Yeah.
Do you know? Yeah.
And they came back to the next one, and I was like, oh wow, there is actually a space for this. There is, I think, like you say, if you work in it every day, you kind of take it.
You
for
do,
granted.
don't you? Yeah, definitely. Especially the workflow. You're like, oh, we'll just do it that, and then we'll repurpose that, and then we'll add captions, and people are like, captions? You're like, yeah, captions. And just just little things like that once you know, and you've implemented it a couple of times, it feels comfortable. But until you know, there's so much information out there. And I always say that we're in the information age, and the biggest problem is that there's too much information and there's too much contradictory information. People get analysis paralysis, where they've just got so much vast kind of conflicting viewpoints that it's hard to even take the first step, because this person's saying do this, but this person who's equally an expert is saying that this is the approach to take, and you got to post 3 times a day, you got to post 3 times a week. You got to not post too much. It's all about quality over quantity. Well, actually, it's about getting as much out there as possible. So you've got these people who are like, they've both built huge brands, but they're doing it completely differently. But they're financially incentivized for you to do what they're telling you to, because they probably have some sort of subscription model, or they hold speaking events. So then they're kind of preaching that to you, and you're getting things kind of bombard you from all angles, and it's difficult, isn't it? There's a lot out there. So what advice would you have for yourself then, for if you were kind of getting started on this journey again? What would you go and do to fast track the success that you've had, and what advice would you give to yourself?
I think I probably spent a lot of years listening to other people too much.
Right.
I think I get gut feelings about stuff, and I had gut feelings years ago. I was like, I should just go freelance. I should just go do my own thing. I really need to not work for someone else. And I never did. And I think it was kind of like a worry about like finances, obviously, and stuff. But then I used to suffer from pretty bad anxiety.
Right.
The second that I set my own business up, the anxiety just dissipated.
Really?
Because it was like, it's all on me now. I'm not relying on anyone else.
Yeah.
I've got no expectations of anyone else.
It puts the control back into your hands, doesn't it?
And for the first time in years, I feel like in control of everything.
Right.
And I think had I known that 5 years ago, I'd have been like, yep, okay, sign me up.
Straight in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what I think might have helped you with that, though, that I've noticed a trend? The pandemic. The pandemic showed people that had safe jobs that actually, if that business gets into trouble, that safe job that you have, it isn't safe. They'll axe you as quickly as they have to. So actually putting yourself through something that you don't want to because it's safe and reliable, it might not actually be safe or reliable. And in fact, you're just doing yourself a disservice, because you could be pursuing something for yourself. So when did you go completely freelance?
Completely. Last week.
Right. Okay. So we're 5 weeks into the. We're 1 week into this. I feel like we need to do another one of these. And
I was working part time.
Right.
I was working like as a part time social media manager.
Right. Okay.
And yeah, just in the last month or so, just went right. Yeah, I need to push the button on that, because.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of like freelance, isn't it? You've got like one main client and then you've got other kind of smaller clients that you kind of working alongside.
Yeah, so I've been freelance, and the company's been running for like a year and a bit now. Yeah.
Yeah. So what advice then would you give to other people who've just gone freelance? So obviously your advice to yourself would have been to do it earlier, but what advice would you give to people who are kind of taking their first steps?
I think networking's a big one.
Right.
I think even like, I've spoken to people like, oh, you go to networking events? I'm like, yes. Even if you don't necessarily need clients right now, go, show up, make a thing of showing your face. I think you'll get remembered. And like in 6 months' time, when you do need clients, it means that you can reach out, or you can maybe put some posts up or whatever. I feel like LinkedIn's fantastic for that. I absolutely love LinkedIn.
It's good to put an actual human being though to that LinkedIn page.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's good to like meet people in person, isn't it? It's interesting because it's almost counterintuitive for somebody who works in social media to say that physical networking events are probably the most important thing, but they are so good, aren't they?
Definitely. And I think even like I normally go through the pattern of kind of, looking around on LinkedIn, connect with a few people, and then when you do see them at a networking event and have an in-person conversation with you, that's what converts to clients rather than just messaging back and forth and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's probably the best advice. I think also as well as like creativity wise, I think getting yourself in a space with other creatives really, really helps.
Yes.
I couldn't imagine anything worse than being a freelance content creator, being sat in my spare room on my own staring at a laptop screen all day.
Yes.
So I like regularly meet up with people who are in the same industry and throw some ideas around, that sort of thing.
Brainstorm and just, I think that's a really good thing that you've touched on there. That's a mindset shift from seeing people who work in the same industry as you, from competitors to collaborators and friends and, soundboarders, someone to bounce ideas off, rather than just seeing them as competition?
I think that's a big one as well. Like, I have multiple friends who work in the same industry or have their own companies, and if there's a client that comes through, I'm like, I'm not suited to this, but they are.
Yeah.
You can hand them over, and I think, not feeling like everyone's competition is probably really good advice as well.
Yeah. It helps you kind of be settled, doesn't it? If you're constantly thinking that everybody around you is trying to take your lunch money, then it's difficult to form those kind of relationships that you need to ultimately get the opportunities in the future, because like you said there, they might then pass you someone on. There might be a collaborative opportunity that comes up. But yeah, so networking is still massive.
I think as well, another one, it's knowing when to say no to stuff.
Right.
Is a really, really big one. Like, I think people have this preconceived idea when they do go freelance that it's like, I need all of the work all of the time because, oh my God, one of them might stop using me or whatever.
Yeah.
But then you're just overworked and you don't end up doing a good job for the clients that you do have because you spread yourself too thin.
Yeah.
And especially with an ADHD thing, like, if I'm not interested in a brand, it feels like proper work.
Yes.
Whereas I know that I'm not going to do the best job for this client. It's no one meant to say no.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did a podcast with Dylan from D-Tats. He's actually based in Chesley. He's a tattoo studio, awesome. If you're ever looking for another tattoo, they're based in Chesley Street, which is your original neck of the woods. But I was speaking to him yesterday, and he was talking about the kind of transition from, they always used to do like tribal tattoos, and that was like everybody wanted that, and then it was actually like starting to say no to those. And we kind of got into it, and it's interesting that you say that about saying no, because actually it has a terrible long-term repercussion if you say yes to things you don't want to do, because eventually you'll start having to say no to things you do want to do, and you'll start chasing your tail, and, you know, saying no to things kind of goes hand in hand with knowing your worth as well. So knowing what your time's worth, knowing what your mental health's worth, to be doing things that you really hate isn't good for you. So, you know, knowing what your time and your time and kind of state is worth, and saying no to things that aren't like an automatic, immediate yes, because otherwise you'll fill your diary with things that you hate doing. And then you'll probably also, if you're just saying yes to everything, be doing things cheaper than you want to, because that's a slippery slope where it's like you say yes to something because out of necessity, and then you make terrible decisions. I was explaining that the worst financial decisions that you make are when you are in a compromised financial position. If you had, you know, a good safety net of revenue from other clients and kind of money saved, you would never say yes to things that you didn't want to do. But if you're in a position where you've had to say yes, you've said yes to some things that you didn't want to do, you've compromised on your rates, now you're kind of in this vicious cycle where you have to keep going with that, and then you don't have the time to do the things that you do want to do. So I think saying no to things is really, really important. And I think it's probably something that maybe like the ADHD can have an effect on, like not wanting to disappoint people.
Yeah, definitely. Chronic people pleaser, normally.
Yeah.
And that with the perfectionism, and it's a recipe for disaster, really.
Yeah. But then obviously it's so, like, you've managed to navigate that. So, and it served you well to kind of get where you wanted to be. What do you think is next then for you? How do you envision things growing? Is the food blog something that you're still wanting to kind of push on, and do you have any plans for that?
No real plans for Jodie Scran yet.
Yeah.
I think I've got a few interesting clients and stuff coming through at the minute, and now I'm kind of at the point where I'm considering, do I need someone else like on the team?
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, but we'll see. There's a few that are in the pipeline, and if they get signed off, then there's potential there for it.
Yeah, to bring somebody else on to work alongside of you.
Yeah,
that's
probably
really
just
cool.
part-time for now, but still.
Yeah,
something worth considering.
That's so cool. That's such like a pivotal moment within any business, isn't it? To realize that you're no longer like trading time for money.
I think as well, it's kind of like knowing what my weaknesses are and
Right.
try and find someone to fill that. Like, you wear a lot of hats when you start a business, and you kind of have to have a go at everything. And it's not that I'm bad at stuff, but
Yeah.
I know where my time's best spent.
Yes.
And it's not on chasing invoices and just like little
Yeah.
things like that, even. Or like, I can do graphics, but I'm not a graphic designer, so is
you'd
that an
rather get
option?
someone
Yeah.
to, yeah. My big thing is like, you know, when you bringing people on, you bringing staff in and working with people, the thing that excites me the most is organised people. Like if you're organised,
Yeah.
because then that's what I struggle with. So it's
Yeah.
like when people are around me and they're organised, that's like what really draws me towards them, because then it allows me to go and be sporadic.
Yeah. See, I'm only organised if like it involves other people.
Right.
I think it's an ADHD thing, but like, so I time block my time. I've got a colour coded diary. It's absolutely ridiculous, like how much details in my Google Calendar.
Yeah.
But that's because if it's not in there, I will just forget about it.
Right. Okay.
So, but it's having the accountability of having someone else involved in a project that makes me organised.
Yeah, so I organise to meet like my gym partner at the gym every morning. So that's like my thing, where if I just was going to do it myself, maybe I'd be a bit later, and then I'd get there a bit late, and then I'd have to not do a full session because I'd have to be somewhere else for a certain time. So it's again like working out what your weaknesses are, not wanting to let people down,
Yeah.
and turning them into strengths. Organise someone to meet me there. I'm not going to let them down. I'm going to be there. So then you work with what you've got, which I think is something that is really helpful when you get into being self-employed, because you don't have someone breathing down your neck.
Yeah.
You know, you've got clients, but they're not managing you. All they are interested in is the results. They're not actually interested in what goes into it. Like, your clients don't care if it takes you 40 hours to do what they're paying you for or for. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it takes you, if you spend all day and night working on their stuff, they're not bothered.
No.
And if you spend 2 hours, but it's what they wanted, they're also not bothered. Do you know what I mean? They're never even going to know. So yeah, I think that's some really good advice for people who are getting into kind of self-employment. So last thing then, where do you see the kind of social media landscape going? How do you see it changing from what you've kind of seen since you got started? And where are your predictions as to where that goes?
That's a good one.
I mean, since you started then, what's been the big... I know we spoke about IGTVs before,
Yeah.
but what have you kind of noticed since 2018, launching the blog? What's...
Other than like the obvious like increase in video and all that kind of thing. For brands, I'd say it's definitely social media is now a conversation.
Right.
It's not just a one-way street.
Yeah.
It needs to be
Reciprocation.
Yeah, 100%. I think one thing that I like, and I think that I see happening more in the future, is the whole embracing dual screening. So like TV and Netflix, and having stuff on your phone, the interactive side of like apps while there's a game show on, that kind of thing.
Right.
And
Okay.
I think there's going to be a push towards the sort of like almost encouragement of being on your phone whilst watching something on Netflix or whatever.
Right. So like, yeah, I mean, we're getting close to like some sort of Hunger Games level shit where I can like, I'm watching something and I can like vote now to like drop 10 snakes on this like X Factor contestant. Yeah, I definitely think that it's getting weird. But so you think like I can see everything linking up. Like you can see, you know, even all of the devices that you have talking to one another. Like, you know, you've got like Apple have got their watches and then their screens and their laptop. Everything's like interconnectivity and kind of linked up. So do you see things kind of going more that way where we'll be using social media and the digital platforms that we have to kind of talk to the brands that we're wanting to work with?
Yeah, I mean, it's already kind of feel like it's already kind of happening. You know, when is your phone listening to you and stuff like that? Obviously, you get served ads on your phone.
My phone's listening to me.
Yeah.
My phone is listening to me. There's things that I've never ever searched, and why would I? I'm going to go back to Dylan now because I was getting a tattoo from Dylan. I've never searched tattoo equipment. Why would I? I've never been interested. Like, I'm never going to do tattooing. I'm certainly not going to do my own tattoos. And I was talking to him just because I was interested about like the sort of pens that they use and how much they are and stuff like that, just because I was probably being nosy, to be fair. And he was saying like X amount and this pen, that pen. And then I started getting adverts for tattoo pens to buy them. Like,
it's so strange.
That's not an algorithmic thing.
No.
Because even if you are searching ideas for tattoos, like they're not assuming that you're going to have those ideas and then just start whacking them on yourself.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Oh, I really want this back piece. You ever thought about doing it yourself? Like pandemic style, cutting your own hair, just giving yourself your own tattoos. But Dylan's actually got his head tattooed, and he was saying people ask him if he did it himself. He was going, the back of my head. Like, of course I didn't. With what, 9 mirrors, and I'm just like, yeah. So people ask stupid questions. Yeah. So yeah, it's listening to me. It's listening 100%. To me. I refuse to have kind of, so I don't know if people can see from the kind of the podcast, but basically we're in like an archway. So this is like an archway. It kind of looks like an Anderson shelter. And I refuse to have conspiracy talks. So sometimes when the guys are in here, we're just chatting and like a conspiracy will come up. Yeah. And like someone will say something, it might not even be too kind of like left field, but it'll be something mad like, the Earth's hollow or something and reptiles live inside. It's never usually that bad, but I just refuse. I shut it down. I go, look, guys, I'm not having that conversation while I'm sat in essentially a bunker. Do you know what I mean? Like with a tinfoil helmet on, with like grass on the walls, and I'm sat like in a bunker with you guys talking about like 5Gs giving people bad heads or something. So yeah, I try to steer clear of conspiracies just while I'm in this bunker. Outside of the bunker, it's fine. I'm usually pretty happy to delve into a bit of a conspiracy. How did I get to conspiracy theories? Oh yeah, my phone's listening to me, which it definitely is. That's not even a conspiracy. So yeah, you feel like the link between your phone and all of the other media that you consume. I mean, I feel like we're already getting to a point where all advertisement is specific. Because say, for example, like you're watching a TV program, you're streaming it. You should get different adverts to me because we're interested in different things. It doesn't make sense to show us both a makeup advert. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, because I've never expressed interest in buying makeup. Yeah. So it doesn't make sense. Whereas, you've got that on your phone where you see the adverts that kind of make more sense. So I do envision that being something that is kind of moving forward, and I think that there is plans, especially with Amazon Prime or something like that, to have your own adverts, so like people can do their. It's not Amazon, but it's Sky. Yeah. Because I was at a networking event and someone from Sky was there, and he was basically talking about how you can have adverts. I mean, there's going to be like a certain amount. It's not like Facebook ads where you can spend a tenner. It's going to be a certain amount, but like not ridiculously high amount. I mean, we're talking about like hundreds to maybe a couple of thousand. And imagine like Game of Thrones is on and your local business adverts on before that. Yeah. Like the credibility that that's going to give you to be right before Game of Thrones is pretty major. So I can envision that. So with that being said, what would your kind of advice be then to brands with the way that social media is obviously looking to change in digital marketing? What would be like getting out ahead and some things that, like, what's the main thing that you're doing to future-proof the businesses that you work with?
Good question.
I know I'm putting you on the spot a lot here, aren't I? I don't actually have any prepared questions. People ask me if I like prepared questions, but I don't prepare any questions.
I think a lot of the brands I work with are very small businesses normally. Yeah. This sounds like I'm just plugging my business, but I'm not. No, please plug away. We're going to tag it and everything. I do genuinely believe, I mean, there's some people who do great social media, like in-house and stuff like that, but outsourcing social media, especially if you're maybe a small business that doesn't have the capacity to have someone dedicated to that role, because by using an agency and stuff or using someone else, they've got their finger on the pulse all the time. Yeah. I feel like for small businesses, outsourcing some stuff or getting someone on board, like the content creation course and stuff. Yes, have someone who's specifically focused on that, not Jenny who works in accounts who whacks a post on every so often. You need that. You need people. You need people specific for it, because trying to do that and do everything else doesn't work. It's
Look, if
not
you're
a
an
part-time
accountant,
job.
you know about accountancy, and you got to keep your finger on the pulse with that, 'cause shit's going to change.
Yeah.
And how do you keep your finger on the pulse of several things at once? There's changes in all businesses, and it's figuring out what the way that things are going to change and how that's going to affect your business, and being able to focus on that whilst you're focusing on your other job, whilst you're focusing on internal things. Like, you're good at whatever it is that your business does, but that doesn't necessarily correlate to being good at this external thing.
Yeah.
It's like you wouldn't just start doing your own plumbing.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because you probably could.
Yeah.
Like, I probably could put a shower in, but it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It wouldn't be linked to the water or anything. It would just be there.
It's so funny. So one of the, literally just doing a campaign at the moment with one of my clients, and the whole campaign is get the professionals in. You wouldn't cut your own hair. You wouldn't do your own plumbing. You wouldn't rewire your own
Give
house.
yourself a tattoo. So
Yeah,
stop
exactly.
sending me adverts. Yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't, would you? It would be just bizarre. Yeah, it's important. I think people are starting to recognise it a lot more now. That there's a lot more that goes into it
I think
than just
people
whacking a post on.
And people used to think that social media was a nice to have. It's not for any business now. It's essential.
No.
It's a necessity. So why half-arse it? Do you know what I mean?
It's not whether we're going to go on social media. Like, people used to be like, oh, are we going to do social media? It's now, how good are you going to do it?
Yeah.
Because if you've got a shit social media, what else are you shit at?
Yeah.
You shit at accountancy because you do not take things seriously.
Yeah.
Like, do not have a professional approach to all aspects of your business. And that's the mindset that people have when they land on something, and they're like, you haven't put much effort into this. You haven't hired a professional. You don't have anybody
Yeah.
in-house. Is the business struggling?
Yeah.
Is the business struggling because you're bad? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, nobody will ever ask those questions, but they might go through that thought process. It's like, at best, people might not even notice your social media.
Yeah.
But at worst, they might notice that it's shit.
Yeah.
And then they might start thinking, maybe you guys are sloppy.
Yeah.
Or maybe this isn't going so, or maybe this is a small outfit, or, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that sounds harsh, but, you're definitely competing against at least one business with a good social media.
Yeah, exactly.
Regardless of what business you're in. And I just want to say for the record that I didn't go to say irregardless. I just straight up said regardless. Apparently I've got like a problem with saying irregardless isn't a word, and I keep saying it. And you'll notice, like, as the podcast has progressed, I keep saying irregardless, I keep getting pulled up on it, and then I go regardless. And now I just don't say it at all, and people wouldn't even notice. But now I draw real attention to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's really useful to kind of hear it from a professional's standpoint, and from someone who's obviously took a alternative route into doing it and has done it through enjoying it. But then it's so good to see that you can enjoy something, do it, and then carve out a career, because I think that's really inspiring for people, especially people who are disillusioned in what they're doing or don't feel like they have the necessary background, education, or tools to do it. Actually, I think from everything that you've said there, the key to it all is to get started.
Definitely.
So yeah, thank you so much for coming in and chatting to us about that. And it was good to like learn a little bit more about like the stuff that you've done as well. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Cheers.